Welcome to the Brooklyn Historical Society, where the vibrant history of Brooklyn is made tangible, meaningful, and relevant today. These videos feature inspirational highlights and excerpts from our teaching and learning materials. To find more resources about the history of Brooklyn, visit us online at www.brooklynhistory.org. This is the first video in a three-part series on one of Brooklyn's and the world's most iconic historical landmarks, the Brooklyn Bridge. In 1642, the Dutch town of New Amsterdam occupied the island of Manhattan, originally a Lenni Lenape territory that is now known as Lower Manhattan. During this time, European settlers crossed the East River between the villages of Brooklyn and New Amsterdam by boat. After the British took over in 1664, Cornelius Dixon was one of the first people to see transportation by boat between Brooklyn and the newly named New York as a business opportunity, and he began a small ferry service using rowboats. Eventually, more ferry companies opened using either sailboats or horse-powered boats to travel back and forth across the river, as seen here. In the 1700s and early 1800s, people used ferries to take farm goods, animals, and other products from Brooklyn across the river to sell at public markets. People also used ferries to commute to work, to shop, and to fulfill other business and commerce needs. The first steam engine ferry ran across the East River in 1814 and was operated by a man named Robert Fulton. By the mid-1800s, steam-powered ferries replaced sailboats, horse-powered boats, and rowboats. These steam engine ferries were faster than other modes of transportation and allowed people to cross the river in as little as 5 minutes. This invention allowed people to commute and shop on a more frequent basis. While the ferries were able to move people, animals, and things faster between Brooklyn and Manhattan, it led to unforeseen challenges. By 1870, there were 15 ferry companies operating along the East River, and at least 50,000 people traveled daily between Brooklyn and New York using these ferries. The commute was arduous, with constant delays, leaking ship roofs, and the daily rush of crowds boarding and disembarking. According to a New York Times article from July 28, 1867, titled "The Ferry Nuisance," the ferries presented no order, no system, and nothing to prevent chaos. In addition to the overcrowded and therefore dangerous ferries, additional river crossing challenges were faced in the winter months. The region would become so cold that the East River would freeze, making ferry service impossible. As a result, people would walk, skate, or ride in special horse-driven carriages across the frozen river. In spring, this was especially dangerous because no one knew when the river would thaw. Unfortunately, those who tried to cross the river as it began to thaw could fall into the river and drown. For many years, this seemed like an unsolvable problem whose cause was nature itself. How could people create a solution that allowed them to adapt to this situation? As recounted by members of the Roebling family, it has been said that John Roebling and his son Washington were on a ferry when the East River froze. John looked at his son and told him that a bridge was needed to solve the problems presented by winter along the East River. As an engineer, John proposed a suspension bridge that would stretch between the city of Brooklyn and the then city of New York, connecting Brooklyn's Fulton Street with Fulton Street in New York. Roebling had built many bridges at this point, including one in Niagara Falls, that were sturdy and withstood their harsh conditions. Originally, his design was called the East River Suspension Bridge, but it was later decided to name it the Brooklyn Bridge because of its connection to Brooklyn, and it has since proved to be one of the finest bridges the Roeblings built. In 1869, construction started on the Brooklyn Bridge. Some people, including ferry owners concerned about losing their livelihoods, and others concerned about bridge safety, questioned whether building a bridge was a good idea. Despite these concerns, the bridge opened 14 years later on May 24, 1883, to much fanfare and celebration. Travel between Brooklyn and New York was finally easier and faster, and the bridge allowed people to go back and forth more frequently. Over 137 years later, the Brooklyn Bridge still stands. In addition to the people commuting via bridge between Brooklyn and Manhattan, people come from all around the world to see the bridge as an iconic New York City landmark. According to a 2016 report from the New York City Department of Transportation, an average of 100,000 motor vehicles, 10,000 pedestrians, and 3,500 cyclists cross the Brooklyn Bridge every weekday. It is viewed as a technological marvel that solved the complex problem whose cause, the East River, was constant and unchangeable. The bridge allowed New Yorkers to adapt to their surroundings and contributed to the dynamic growth of New York City. For more information about life in Brooklyn before and after the Brooklyn Bridge, check out our Brooklyn Bridge Curriculum Kit in the Teaching Resources section of our website, www.brooklynhistory.org.